Welcome, Gunrunner.
When posting my most recent Amazing Facts poll, it struck me that I hadn't given handhelds much of a look in, with only the Atari Lynx being covered thus far. And I decided that I'd better change that, so instead of 5 traditional consoles to choose from, I listed 3 plus a couple of handhelds. And once I started thinking about potential candidates, the WonderSwan just seemed like a perfect fit. And given the way quirky, interesting and obscure systems have proved popular in these polls, I had a sneaky feeling the Bandai handheld would take the win, before people even started voting. And I was proved right, as it took a pretty convincing 29% of the vote, beating the second place Sega Game Gear by 7%, which further proved my theory that people would also like to see some portables featured. The Bandai WonderSwan was officially unveiled in Tokyo on the 8th of October 1998, with the company promising a 30-hour plus battery life, low retail price and a launch lineup of over 50 games. People were surprised to see a company like Bandai appear to go up against the might of Nintendo, and were even more shocked when they learned it would have a monochrome screen, although Bandai later revised this of course. But they were also pleased to see a genuine alternative to Nintendo's more family focused brand, and the WonderSwan already seemed somewhat more grown up, from its sleek design and mysterious name alone. The WonderSwan launched in Japan only on March the 4th, 1999, and lasted 4 years on the market, more than a lot of people thought, building up a pretty committed and passionate user base in the process. Because it was only ever released in Japan, the handheld remains somewhat alluring and mysterious for those of us in the West, a wonder of what could have been. And that makes it the perfect candidate for one of these videos. So now it's time to get on with the show, so I proudly present 10 amazing Bandai WonderSwan facts.
WonderSwan, only from Bandai.
I'm going to start this list with something quick and simple, but something that I, and I'm sure many others, have always wondered. What the hell is that name all about? I mean, to a native English speaker like myself, the WonderSwan name is just so strange. Why would I be amazed by a swan, and what does a graceful river bird have in common with a handheld video game console? Well, the answer is nothing really, because the answer lies within the wonderful world of English, in a special category along with the likes of Donkey Kong and the Bitcorp Game8. Stop laughing at the back. Apparently Bandai chose the name of the system to highlight its aesthetics and technical capabilities, because the swan is recognised as an elegant bird with powerful legs that aid its graceful swimming. Now, to somebody who doesn't speak English natively, that probably makes perfect sense. The Japanese are apparently rather obsessed with English words that sound nice rather than sound right, and I watched a whole YouTube video on the subject quite recently that was very interesting indeed. So yeah, it's an impressive and graceful handheld, a wonderful swan. WonderSwan. No doubt they would have renamed it for the West had it ever made it across the sea, but more on that particular subject later on.
Only from Bandai.
I think the most surprising and also fascinating fact about the WonderSwan is that it was designed by none other than Nintendo stalwart Gunpei Yokoi and his self-founded company Koto Laboratory. For those of you who have been living in a cave for the last 40 years and somehow don't know, this was the man responsible for not only the Game & Watch but also the phenomenon that was the industry-changing Game Boy. Unfortunately, he was also the man behind the Virtual Boy, and that system's woes will no doubt be covered in a future Amazing Facts video, and that's what caused him to leave Nintendo and go out on his own. Keen to prove that lightning can indeed strike twice, he went on to design both the hugely popular Tamagotchi Virtual Pet and of course the WonderSwan for his new company. Nintendo's loss was Bandai's gain, as they released both products onto the market and made a lot of money in the process. Despite Gunpei being quite bitter about the way he was seemingly forced out of Nintendo, the Big N has since gone out their way to recognise his legacy and have stated that many later products such as the DS and the Switch would not have come about without Gunpei's philosophy. Sadly, he never got to see how his legacy developed, as he was killed in a car accident in 1997, just prior to the handheld's release.
Only from Bandai.
And from probably the most well-known fact about the WonderSwan to possibly the most obscure, but also one that most people will find just as interesting, and that is Sega's very brief flirtation with Bandai, and indeed the WonderSwan, that could have resulted in a very different and arguably more successful path for the handheld. You see, although Bandai had already had plenty of experience in the video game markets, starting back in the 70s with handheld LCD games, they hadn't had much success. Firstly, there was the Supervision 8000 console in 1979, which failed to make any impact, being soundly thrashed by the rival Epoch Cassette Vision. Then they tried a different route, licensing already established Western consoles such as the Intellivision, Arcadia 2001 and Vectrex, but failed to gain any significant market share on every single occasion. After this, they chose to concentrate on software for a while, this time with great success as they became one of the first third-party publishers for the Nintendo Famicom. But keen to forge their own path, they tried to go it alone once again with the Playdia in 1994, a console squarely aimed at younger children with games based on popular Bandai properties such as Dragon Ball Z, Sailor Moon, Ultraman and Hello Kitty. But again, they just couldn't replicate their success for the toy industry and decided they needed to team up with somebody who had already captured this market. Rather strangely, their first choice was actually an American company in Apple, who they collaborated with to create the ill-fated Pippin, a system squarely aimed at adults rather than kids with its multimedia capabilities and computer-like functionality. Launched in 1996, it was discontinued just a year later after miserable sales of just 42,000 units. You have to admire Bandai really for their perseverance alone, because most companies would have given up by now, but after seeing the amazing products that Gunpei Yokoi had in the pipeline, they decided to have one last roll of the dice, and approached a company who was ingrained in Japanese culture as much as they were in Sega. And in 1997, they proposed a merger with the company to form Sega Bandai Limited. This would have seen Sega develop games for the then still in development WonderSwan and use their worldwide presence to help take it into other markets. But less than a week after approving it, Bandai's board of directors called off the deal at an emergency meeting. Knowing that Bandai needed them more than they needed Bandai, Sega chose to just walk away, and as a result, Bandai were once again left to go it alone with a new console, and you can't help but wonder how different things could have been with Sega's involvement.
Only from Bandai.
The thing that surprised people the most about the WonderSwan upon release was that it had a monochrome screen. Given the Game Boy Color hit the market around 5 months before, and we had already seen other colour handhelds like the Atari Lynx and Sega Game Gear, it seemed like a huge step back. However, Bandai remained confident that the WonderSwan with its black and white screen would still perform well in the market, citing the success of the original Game Boy when compared to its aforementioned colour screen competitors. And they weren't completely wrong, as initially the WonderSwan sold very well indeed, but once Nintendo dropped the price of their new colour handheld, sales of Bandai's portable pretty much dried up. In response, the company went to work on a new colour version of the WonderSwan and released it just in time for the all-important Christmas market in the year 2000, nearly 2 years after the launch of the original unit. This new model was 100% backwards compatible with the original WonderSwan and used the exact same design, just adding a new screen and an updated graphics chip that could display up to 241 colours out of a palette of 4096 with up to 28 sprites per line, a big improvement on the 8 shades of grey found in the original WonderSwan. But they weren't quite done with the upgrades yet, as we'll go on to discover shortly.
Only from Bandai.
Like another handheld that came before it in the Atari Lynx, the WonderSwan was widely praised for its range of innovative features, one of which it very much shares with the Lynx actually, the ability to be used vertically or horizontally. This particular feature is most notable in games like the addictive puzzler Gunpei and system exclusive shoot 'em up Judgment Silversword. It also allowed players to record their personal information such as their name, birth date and even their blood type, which can then be accessed and used by the games. Another rather striking feature was the range of attractive colours the handheld was available in. The original WonderSwan was available in pearl white, skeleton green, silver metallic, skeleton pink, blue metallic, skeleton blue, skeleton black, camouflage and gold. 3 limited edition two-tone models were also released in frozen mint, sherbet melon and soda blue. This paint chart approach was carried over to the colour model too, which gave a choice of pearl blue, pearl pink, crystal black, crystal blue and crystal orange. These new colours were decided via a public vote on Bandai's own website. But I think you'd have to agree that the best feature of the WonderSwan was the Wonder Witch, an official software development kit released by Qt Corporation that was aimed at amateur programmers. It cost 11,800 yen and let you develop games in the C programming language and then play them on your console, a bit like the NetHero system for the PlayStation. Other innovative features of the portable also included the Wonderborg, a robot that could be remotely controlled through the unit, the Pocket Station, a memory card peripheral for the PlayStation console, operated via a device known as the Wonder Wave, and finally later models of the WonderSwan were also capable of connecting to the internet via a mobile phone network.
Only from Bandai.
Just under 2 years after the launch of the WonderSwan Color, Bandai replaced the console again with the revised Swan Crystal. This was released in response to the new Nintendo Game Boy Advance, which had launched a year before to great success. Bandai, knowing they were losing a lot of ground against their rival, played it clever by pricing the Swan Crystal at 1,000 yen less than the Nintendo Portable. Once again, Bandai held a poll on its website to determine the new case colours they'd make available, and subsequently released the system in blue violet, wine red, crystal blue and crystal black. There was a lot of interest in the new version of the handheld despite the huge success of the Game Boy Advance, mainly thanks to its vastly improved colour LCD screen, low price and long battery life. As before, it was 100% backwards compatible with all existing WonderSwan games. The new TFT LCD screen had a superior response time to the one used in the previous model, and this helped remove the dreaded motion blur that plagued many early handhelds. Unfortunately, this initial interest quickly died out as the Game Boy Advance went on to absolutely dominate the market, mainly thanks to much improved technology and superior game selection. Unable to compete, Bandai discontinued the WonderSwan line in 2003, just a year after the launch of the Swan Crystal, which proved to be the worst selling model in the range. After this failure, Bandai finally bit the bullet and never re-entered the home console market ever again.
Only from Bandai.
Now you might be surprised by some of the information I'm about to unravel, especially as the WonderSwan is often painted as a failure, and indeed I've already mentioned Bandai's struggles when faced with the Nintendo behemoth, and their failure to wrestle a significant share of the handheld console market from their clutches. So if I told you that the WonderSwan sold 3.5 million units in Japan, you'd be pretty shocked, right? But yeah, that's true. That's more than the Atari Lynx sold worldwide, and more than the Sega Master System sold in both North America and Japan combined. But you certainly don't hear the WonderSwan talked about nearly as much as either of those. At one point, the WonderSwan accounted for 8% of the Japanese handheld market, which might not seem like that much, but you have to look at just how dominant Nintendo was in that sector, and still is actually. Bandai have also said that over 10 million WonderSwan cartridges were sold during its lifetime too. Not too shabby. And this no doubt leads you to question why a console with that level of success was restricted to Japan only, and yes, I'll get on to that rather pertinent question shortly.
Only from Bandai.
The most asked question I hear with regards to the WonderSwan is why the handheld was never released in the West, and it's a very good question, especially as it achieved a fair amount of success in its homeland, as I previously detailed. Unfortunately, a good answer to this question has never been revealed, so we can only go on the facts we have and then speculate a little. What we do know is that in early 2000 a deal was struck between Bandai and fellow toy company Mattel to bring the handheld to Western markets. Mattel had previously released several systems in the West with mixed success, including their own Intellivision, the Nintendo NES in Western Europe, and a range of popular handheld games too. And I'm guessing that Mattel hoped that people would remember the latter of those when licensing the WonderSwan. However, later that same year the agreement was quietly terminated, with no official statement ever made that explained why. However, it's been rumoured that both Mattel and Bandai got cold feet after seeing the announcement and the reveal of the Game Boy Advance, which was considerably more powerful than the WonderSwan and had the huge advantage of replacing the existing market leader, the Game Boy Color. It would have been interesting to know if Mattel planned to change the name of the handheld for the West, because the WonderSwan name certainly sounds strange to a native English speaker, as I already went into. We can only wonder, I suppose.
Only from Bandai.
I can clearly remember the first time I played on a WonderSwan at a video game convention. My friend David had just bought one and was excited to show me the quirky handheld. The one thing that surprised me more than anything about the device as I turned it in my hand was that it took a single AA battery. Yep, just one. As somebody whose handheld history was mainly centred around the power guzzling Atari Lynx, with its 6 AA cells, this was a huge surprise. I mean, even the original black and white Game Boy used 4 AAs, so to see a quarter of that in a colour handheld was quite the shock, I can tell you. Even more so when I learned it boasted a 20-hour battery life, 40 hours on the original monochrome unit. It's not as if the WonderSwan was lacking under the hood either, as the hardware was pretty powerful for the time, certainly a lot more so than its closest rival, the Game Boy Color. Based around a 16-bit NEC V30MZ CPU of just over 3 MHz, it also boasted a resolution of 224x144, a 4-channel stereo PCM sound chip, 512K of RAM, and a palette of 4096 colours on the later models. The WonderSwan Color wasn't just a lot less thirsty than other handhelds of its ilk, it was also much smaller too, measuring just 12.8cm long, 7.43cm high and 2.43cm wide. Very impressive indeed. And as I've already detailed, it was a lot less punishing on the wallet when it came to buying batteries too.
Only from Bandai.
It's often been said that a console is only as good as its games library, and this phrase has often been used to attack failed consoles that were much more powerful than their rivals. And given the WonderSwan was released by a lesser known player in the video game sector and was up against the industry controlling Nintendo, you'd be forgiven for thinking that the WonderSwan's games library might be a little lacking. But that's actually far from the truth, as you'll see when you start digging into it. Big name publishers like Capcom, Konami, Taito, Squaresoft and Namco supported the machine with great versions of games like Golden Axe, Space Invaders, Final Fantasy, Tetris and Rockman lighting up its little screen. In total there were 109 games released for the original WonderSwan, with a further 91 published for the colour variant. Obviously a lot of these are unplayable for Western gamers such as the Japanese language RPGs, but there is still plenty of great stuff to discover for those who want to import one. There are also plenty of great exclusives too, so expect the WonderSwan to get a starring role in one of my amazing exclusives videos sometime in the future.
WonderSwan.
And that rounds up my look at 10 amazing Bandai WonderSwan facts. Which one of these fabulous facts was your favourite, or can you think of any other tantalising tidbits of trivia that I didn't include? I also love to hear the thoughts and views of my audience, so please get typing in that comments section. Before I go though, I must thank all of my loyal patrons who continue to support my channel and make videos like this possible. However, I must give special thanks to the following patrons and YouTube backers in particular for their much appreciated pledges: Grady Haynes, Mitchell Valentino, Seth A. Robinson, Carl Olsen, Dos Gamerman, Sonic Mania 999, Paul Daniel, Andrew McKay, Retro Resolution, Matt Standish, James Taylor, Trogdall the Burninator, Mins, 8-Bit Guy, Luke MC, Ben P. Stein, Tabby Kitsune, Daniel Skoronsky, and Electron Star Collapse. If you also want to help support all my creative endeavours, including this YouTube channel, then please go and check out my Patreon right now. You can get access to host extra content, including downloads, exclusive videos, creative insights, and much more besides. I've been the Laird, I thank you for watching, and I'll see you all again for another video very soon.